The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
Hey, this is Matt Landry, the voice of Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars The Clone Wars. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Wars. This is where the fun begins.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Welcome to the Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away. From movies to books, TV shows, and more, we are looking at the deeper themes and meanings found in the Star Wars universe. You can follow Secrets of Star Wars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, your favorite podcast app, and of course on the StarQuest YouTube channel. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or on X, the former Twitter, where we are at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And of course, be sure to get your official Secrets of Star Wars gear at sqpn.com/merch. Today, we are discussing the latest episode of The Acolyte. This is episode 4, entitled Day. Intriguing title. My name's Robert King. Joining me on the panel are Patrick Mason. Hey, Patrick.
Howdy, Robert.
And Thomas Salerno. Welcome, Thomas.
Hey there, Robert.
It's great to have you both here. There's a lot to talk about. But first, let me give a quick recap of the episode. Osha and Sol and company have now returned to Coruscant, and Osha wants to get back to her day job. But because May is the Jedi's problem, and she's not a Jedi. But Sol needs her to come with them in the search for May so that they can help bring May back to the light, to bring May back safely. They don't want May to get hurt. So they now head off to Kofar with a substantial contingent of Jedi for backup, and they are going to be looking for Master Kelnaka. There is Master Kelnaka chopping his vegetables and decorating his walls with symbols that look suspiciously like those on May's and Anastaea's foreheads. Of course, May and Chimere are there ahead of them, arguing about what the Master really wants. As they're trudging through the forest, May stops, claiming that the task of killing a Jedi without a weapon is impossible. Chimere thinks she just needs a drink of water, so he goes off to fetch some. And May sets a trap for him so that when he returns, he is strung up and May can go off without him. She has decided that her loyalty is to Osha, not to Chimere's master. So she goes off to turn herself into Kelnaka, but finds him dead, a lightsaber wound still smoking across his chest. The Jedi arrive soon after, but before they're able to enter Kelnaka's dwelling, the Master also appears and ignites his red lightsaber, shoves Osha aside, and engages the Jedi. Roll credits. So we are left with a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of this episode. A lot of stuff going on, especially a lot of sort of delving into the motivations, particularly of Osha and of May. Again, this show seems to be really strongly focused on the relationship between the twins. And so, yeah, maybe let's just start there with, what's going on with Osha and her reluctance to go on looking for May. It's like she just wants to put it all behind her, or so she says. What do you guys think?
I thought it was interesting how when
Master Soul comes to recruit her for the mission, she actually lights up a little bit, and she's like, "You want me to rejoin the Jedi?" And he's like, "Not officially." And then you see poor Osha just deflate. So I feel like she's like, "Oh, you just need me because you need to get to May." So I feel like there's a part of her, the part of Osha, that is still nostalgic for her years with the Jedi, and part of her secretly wants to be part of that community again.
I think you're right. I think she very much is looking for that sense of belonging, that sense of community. And yet she's reluctant to I don't know, jump in or say what she wants.
Yeah, it feels very much like she is still kind of on the run. You know, what we got in episode 3 with sort of the backstory of the Fire and their relationship and the Coven and all that is her just like not wanting to commit, right? She doesn't want to be there forever. She wants to go explore things. She's interested in the Jedi. She doesn't necessarily want to be part of this Coven or with May. And I thought it was interesting, that scene with the two of them at the tree in that episode, where you see this sort of like pulling away and coming together that Osha sort of goes through, kind of trying to pull away from May. And then at the end of it, she's sort of back with May. And I think that's sort of like where she is in this. Like, suddenly May's alive, and she's now killed, you know, two of the Jedi who I, you know, admired theoretically, right? We don't see a whole lot of Osha's relationship with those two Jedi. But we do see her with Soul, and we kind of figure, okay, there was the group of them and her on a spaceship, you know, at least for hyperdrive time, back to Coruscant, and she probably saw them and knew them around the Order. And so this may be sort of just another running tactic. She doesn't want to be, she kind of just wants May to not be a thing anymore like she used to be. You know, 10 days ago, she didn't exist, and now she exists, and she's killed two of my friends. Like, I just don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. I'm out, kind of a deal. That's sort of the feeling I got. But then I think that whole interaction with the Jedi and with some of her own people who were Padawans at the same time she was, probably reminded her, oh yeah, there was a reason I wanted to do this. And I'd kind of like to do it again, or still be part of it. As long as I don't have to wear one of those civilian robes.
That was great.
Well, and then when you see it, you know why, right?
Yeah, that's terrible. I will say, like, I love the sort of, you know, different style of Jedi robes that they're wearing. They're kind of like, okay, this is a different time frame, so they're a little different. For me, it like screams Next Generation versus original series Star Trek. If you compare the uniforms, especially in the movies, like the sort, I don't know, just the feel of them is very much like the old Star Trek.
Is it because of the gold, kind of the yellow and gold?
Maybe, yeah.
That's definitely, I mean, the whole High Republic period has had this white and gold kind of color scheme, heavily, you know, forward in its, you know, all its marketing and, you know, even the introduction to all of these characters, they were wearing white cloaks. Which seem to be mostly, I guess, temple wear, and then when they go out on field missions, they wear brown. But
it's like, despite like my sort of mixed reaction to the High Republic books I've read, I'm a huge fan of the aesthetic. So every time, you know, I get to see that, I'm just like, yeah, I like this. I like this kind of like, there's a reason why, you know, they call it the High Republic. You know, this is supposed to be the Republic at its peak, I guess, and the Jedi at the peak of their power before they start their decline over the next century or so.
Yeah, the aesthetic is definitely one of my favorite parts of the show, including the costume design.
And the ships.
And the ships.
I like that ships. Jedi ship. It has very retro sci-fi vibe to it, like a silvery rocket ship, you know. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah. I love the fact that it has a detachable hyperdrive section, because the physics nerd in me is like, that's exactly what you would want to do. Like as little coming down to the surface as possible, because despite magic, Star Wars, space wizard stuff, like it takes a lot of fuel to come up and down in an atmosphere. And the more you can leave in orbit, the more you're going to. So I absolutely love that aesthetic.
And it's almost like a bulkier predecessor of the hyperdrive ring.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when I first saw it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, clearly a lot of thought has gone into all of the design choices here. And I am a big fan of all of that. And I don't know how much the aesthetic is drawing OSHA toward the Jedi as well. I know I always wanted, to wear cool robes like that when I was a kid. That may be part of the draw for her, as long as I don't have to wear those stupid civilian robes, which like the design triumph of making those robes look, the civilian wear looks so like clunky and dorky is like, it's like, that is good design to make something look bad in the right way.
Yeah. I want this to be something they don't want to wear. Oh, okay.
Although, someone will cosplay as that, though, in the civilian role.
Yeah,
we're going to have. But as long as we're on, like, the kind of aesthetics of the show and where it fits in the wider sort of Star Wars design, like, universe, I feel like somebody on this show, somebody in either the writing team or the creative team, is a big fan of the Adventures of Han Solo novels that were written in, like, I think the late 70s or early 80s, because I've seen a couple of references now that in the first episode, they name dropped the corporate sector. Which was where those novels took place. Those novels are really fun, by the way. They're crazy, but because they were very early Star Wars novels, but they're a lot of fun. So they name drop the corporate sector, and in this episode, one of the major new characters is a Tynan, an alien, which is like a little beaver person. There was a Tynan character in, I think, the second of those Han Solo novels. He was in that book, the Tynan character was a corporate sector agent, I think. Yeah.
This is Basil.
Basil, yes. Basil was the
Tynan. Not the Basil.
Not the Basil.
Basil is his name.
Basil is the Tynan character. Yeah.
Is the Basil with us?
The Basil.
The Basil.
Surprised that it has like an actual like human, like Basil is an actual human name.
Yeah. A saint's name, in fact.
A saint's name, yes. Basil.
Yeah.
Yep. Who composed a very, very long liturgy for the Eastern churches.
Yeah.
The liturgy of Saint Basil. Yep. I like that creature, by the way. That and the effects on that were really, really good. It really looked like a real like thing. Like I could see that kind of creature being actually something that might evolve on Earth or something. Like it was a very like logically, put together. Like, I'm like, okay, yeah, if a beaver or a rodent had evolved like sapience, that's probably what it would look like.
So some of the critiques that I've read of this show talk about the special effects and about Basil in particular.
Really?
It's like, oh no, another CG creature.
Thought he looked
to my eye, he looked pretty good.
Wait, Basil was CG?
That's what the critic was saying anyway.
Okay.
And I'm sure it was at least.
I don't know. Part. Yeah, I got to be part of it.
I'm sure it was at least touched up with CG.
Yeah, like overlay.
It wouldn't surprise me if there was a motion capture actor underneath, but it would surprise me if it was a practical costume or completely a practical costume. Anyway,
it to me it felt like a practical costume because the way the character moved.
Yeah.
Because when you have a practical costume like that, it's very constraining on your movement. I went to like, sort of leaning basically forward and backwards, and it never leaned. Like, it was always just sort of straight up and down. You never really saw it. I mean, we barely even saw it walk, right? It was just that one scene sort of from the overhead where we saw it sort of leading the way down the mountain or down the hillside and all of them falling. The rest of the scenes is just sort of standing there, right? So
yeah,
that screams practical effect to me, because it's when you have something just standing there, you don't have the awesomeness of blurring, which is great for CG, covering up CG problems.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe it was, but if it was, then hey, fooled me. I mean,
and I was watching this episode on kind of a small screen, so if there were problems with the CGI, I wouldn't have noticed anyway.
I did notice, like, in earlier episodes, especially like backgrounds felt a little bit cartoony or video gamey to my eye. But I mean, honestly, I just chalk that up to a budget issue. And I don't know, for me, the quality of the effects, as long as it's not like actively distracting, I'm interested in how the story goes, and the special effects are fine one way or another. I don't know.
I mean, I'm an OG like Star Trek person where they have like the very obvious model on wires go by. So I'm not going to be that distracted from the story by the effects.
Yeah, it's not going to pull me out.
Yeah.
No. I think the effect I really loved in this was the world, right? So the world they were on, the name just suddenly escaped me. Kosh? Something like that, either way. But the
planet.
Kofar,
yeah.
That's right. So they're on Kofar, and pretty much the whole episode takes place there. You know, there's a little bit that happens in Coruscant, which is important, and it's called Day, right? Because once you get to Kofar, you're on a timer. Right, both sides, and it seems like they land on opposite sides of the forest, which I thought was awesome. And they're both diving into the middle of this forest, and they're both racing to the hut before dark, which they don't explain why dark is bad. They don't explain like nighttime is bad. There's a couple encounters that happen that maybe, but like anybody who's been in a forest after dark, you know, I don't really want to be here. There's a reason we made huts and houses for ourselves.
Fire,
yeah. And so the way they do the forest, the ominousness of the forest and the mists and the sort of the mystery in Layden, and constantly you're looking at the shadows slowly lengthen, and you're looking at the sun as it goes down, and all the characters are constantly bringing it up. And I think it lends itself very much to the what goes on in the episode, which is all just very much mystery diving to me. It's like nothing gets explained in this one. It very much feels like a setup for the next. Maybe, but I don't know.
A lot gets hinted at, I think. But yeah. It's. I think you're right. I think it's raising questions more than it's answering them. But yeah. Sorry, go on.
No, I just think I assume the next episode is going to be night, right? Because we had. Didn't we have a similar naming convention for the first and second episode? I can't remember.
Yeah, they had double names each episode.
And Angela was saying off the podcast that apparently the director had intended what is now episodes 4 and 5 to be a single episode.
Yeah.
And it got split in the middle.
So I would assume it would have been day and night, right?
Day/night is my guess for the title, the originally intended title. Assuming Angela is right, and she usually is. I guess the last thing I want to talk about with the aesthetics, while we're on the aesthetics, the first real look we get at the Master, and I was getting like very much the design of that helmet gave me like Alien vibes, as well as kind of Kylo Ren vibes.
Yeah, Knights of Ren. Yeah.
And the way it very much looks like eyes and a grinning mouth of teeth, like almost like Venom or something.
Yeah.
But when you get close, it's not. It's just ridges and piping on the helmet, but it like the impression that it gives is so creepy and menacing, and again, I've seen some people say it's like cartoonish. It's but it's very mustache twirly villainish. It has that over the top evil effect to it, and I don't know that really worked for me.
His entrance was fittingly creepy, especially when he descends from treetop level.
Yeah.
Behind them, sort of in the shadows. I was very unsettled by that. I was like, ugh.
And that's right out of Alien, right? Like that sort of coming out of like the darkness and coming right down to your level and sort of slowly moving up to you. And I could just picture Sigourney Weaver like standing there as it's coming up to her, what I thought was interesting, like about the helmet, that it's dirty, or it's rusty, or there's something. It's not like a flat black or a shiny, or it's kind of got this sort of like once you got real close to it,
definitely textured at least. Yeah.
And that whoever this guy is, he must be supremely confident because he is going to take on a Jedi Master, about half a dozen knights and a Padawan single-handedly. And that's kind of a tall order. Those are long odds, but I think he seems to feel supremely confident in himself.
As well as the real possibility that May's going to come in on the side of the Jedi in this fight.
Yeah, depending on who he is, right? I don't know how much speculation we want to do, but get real heavy vibes and he's Chimera, right?
I left the episode basically convinced he's Chimera. From certain things Chimera said, and he's like, I'm going to go off and get water. I actually said to the screen, I'm like, where are you going? I'm like, you're the Sith Lord. Like, I started like...
They're each setting a trap for each other.
Yeah. It's like, you're going off to do the Superman in the phone booth thing. You're going to change. Yeah. And then when I was totally unconvinced that he's like, oh, I'm dangling here. Oh, hell. I'm like, you're going to get out of that really quickly. Like I've said in a previous episode, I believe he's pulling the Darth Jar Jar thing because he doesn't act like a real clumsy person. He acts like someone acting like a clumsy person.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Like when he knocks over the canister when and I'm like, oh, come on.
I'm like, oh, come on, man. I'm like, he's like that. He reminds me of, I think it was from the second Iron Man movie, that kind of bumbling guy in the beginning who meets Tony Stark in the elevator, and he's got those papers, and he's like, he bumps into Tony Stark, the papers fly everywhere. That kind of like silent film, almost over the top clumsiness.
I was kind of thinking Roger Rabbit a bit.
Yeah.
Just kind of causing chaos wherever he goes that somehow just happens to work out right for him, which, goes right back to the Darth Jar Jar idea.
Oh, and that bit where, May's like, have you seen his face? And he pauses, and then he's like, I haven't. And I'm like,
but on the other hand, it's so obvious. Like I feel like any director would be like, no, it's going to be something different. Like he's going to be
he's a red herring.
Yeah, he's either a red herring or maybe he's this guy's master. Maybe he's like something else.
Oh, yeah.
Because I remember, considering maybe May isn't really an apprentice yet, right? She's just she's the actual apprentice is our helmeted alien man.
Yeah.
and so maybe Chimera is the master. I don't know. But like he's in it somehow. I just don't know how.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's like there's definitely something off about Chimera. It's pointing pretty heavily toward him being the master, but it's almost a little too heavy-handed, and so I don't think I'd be disappointed if the master turned out to be Chimera, but I think I would be more excited to see the master be somebody else and Chimera having a different kind of twist
to
him, which kind of brings us back to, we've been talking a lot about the surface of the episode, kind of deliberately, but we're here for the deeper meanings and themes in the Star Wars galaxy. And so let's talk about characters and motivations some more. I don't know. Do you want to jump in on May first, or should we get back to Osha, or how do we want to get in on this?
I wanted to touch on Soul just briefly.
Oh, go for it.
Because I feel like Soul is hiding something. And I think what he's hiding is going to irreparably damage his relationship with May. That's my gut.
May?
Well, I'm sorry, with Osha. With Osha. Yeah. That's my gut feeling, because he even hints, he says at one point in this episode, later I'll explain everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And just certain things that he's said and visual cues that we've gotten, I'm like, you're hiding something, and it's got to be about the destruction of the Coven, which we were.
What does he say? You're not here to face her. You're here to face your past. We both will.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So he's also looking for a kind of if not absolution, at least some kind of closure to the events back on Brandok.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't have a guy poison himself, because he walked into a place and then one of the kids set fire to something and exploded. Like, you have a guy poison himself for redemption's sake, because he did something terrible, or he thinks he did something terrible, one or the other. I think, Thomas, you're right. I think it's got to be something to do with how the Coven was actually destroyed. Because, the explosion happens, and then Soul's running out with Osha, and they go through the chambers, and they see all the other members of the Coven are dead. And immediately I was like, I don't know, that kind of explosion wouldn't probably have done that. So how did they die?
They were all just lying on the floor. We hear them scream earlier, but we don't see it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I was rewatching the episode, and I got the distinct feeling that when May comes into Osha's room to say, I won't allow you to go with the Jedi, I'll kill you first, that she had already done something outside. I forget exactly what it was that tipped me off. It was something about the editing, about the timing of it, and about her attitude as she was coming into the room. But I got the distinct feeling that she had already set into motion the things that were bringing the Coven to destruction. Either that, or she had already done what she was going to do. And I think it remains to be seen what role the Jedi had in the destruction of the temple, which, again, it seems like there's a lot of guilt riding on these Jedi's shoulders. But there's this strong dynamic going on between May and Osha as well. I mean, the last thing May said to Osha was, I'm going to kill you. But now her loyalty is to Osha. And that's also something that came out really strongly, was that sense that she really believed that she and Osha were almost one person. Like, we are the same. She always uses this language of how alike and how united they are. And Anastasia was always talking about, how they're bound together by the thread.
Well, she goes through such a, you have two scenes split apart by a single scene in between, where in the first one she says, I can't believe Osha turned into one of those, dirty Jedi or Jedi scum or whatever she says.
Jedi scum,
yeah, rebel scum, Jedi scum. I can't believe Osha turned into one of those Jedi scum. And then 2 scenes later, she's like, I need, my loyalty's to Osha. And you're like, how did we go from one to the other? Like, what happened? And she says, well, I had a lot of time to think, is what she said. But I don't buy it necessarily, but I think it has to do with their connection. I think it has to do with the conversation you had with the 2 Coven members about, how they were made. Like, what if the Jedi find out how they were made? And I'm like, okay, what? And then we haven't got anything on that since then. But and I'm like, okay, but one of them has that, infusion spiral mark, right? May has that, and Osha doesn't. And so I'm wondering, is this just sort of okay, she's treating Osha like she's still part of the Coven, or is her loyalty to Osha because it's her twin, or is there a deeper thing going here that we haven't explored yet? Yeah.
These are really good questions.
Right. This was a very mysterious episode for me. A lot of fog.
And with their dynamic too, I know Robert, you and I were kind of chatting about this on the Discord about how I think almost like it's possible. I called it my out there theory, but that sort of May and Osha will almost flip roles by the end. I expect that, especially if what comes out about Soul and the others just really destroys Osha's confidence in the Jedi, I can see her by the end actually being the Acolyte that the show is named after. I can see her turning. If she ends up being in a place where she feels like the organization she trusted above any other, the Jedi, completely betrays her.
Yeah, I mean, you thought it was an out there theory, but as far as I'm concerned, it's being broadcast almost as heavily as Chimera is the master. I mean, the fact that, she's the one who's called out on having so much anger, of seeking revenge. She's not willing to, she doesn't want to pursue May, at least not with the Jedi. And when she does, she's looking for, it's like, I can't kill my sister. Yord, you kill my sister.
Right. You do it.
Yeah. Gosh, it just seems like the dark side is so, they're painting her with such a dark side brush in all of her motivations.
Yeah. And she talks about, like, I couldn't let go of what I'd lost, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's very, Anakin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sort of where you can't let go to the point that you'll seek power in order to keep things that you love from being out of your control. It's that fear of loss that Yoda talks about as a path to the dark side.
I almost wonder if it's not literally a switch, that like what we've seen of May and Osha's characters aren't the opposite of how they've been portrayed in, like, mostly in episode 3, where Osha is the one who wants to go off and do different things and be part of, be a Jedi. And May is the one who has everything that she needs right here in the Coven and wants to stay and wants to ascend. And I'm almost getting that the Osha in the present is like, but I've lost so much. I've lost all the things that I wanted. I'm looking for my community, my family, where I belong. And if I can get back to my Coven, I wonder if that's what she's looking for. Except, as I say that, the other thing she wants to do is make sure May doesn't survive.
Yeah.
Very complex and contradictory motivations. Yeah.
Yeah, I might not be in... I do have a 100% record of being wrong in my predictions on the Star Wars stuff, so I'd better keep up with that.
Oh, speaking of the Jedi, and we sort of left this, it was an earlier scene that we sort of passed over, but that's sort of, I don't know if they're kind of a sub-council or just kind of because they mentioned the Jedi Council, but they are more of like a committee, I guess, that's been put in charge. These various masters have put in charge of this investigation.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to cover this up and they're going to even hide it from the High Council.
Because they would have to report to the Senate. And then it would be public.
And I'm like, okay, yeah. It's like, we all know how in real life, yes, institutions act like this. There are cover-ups. and they will cover up, to save face the most horrible things. And I'm like, I can see where the Jedi, how they eventually get to the point where they are in the prequels. We're starting to see the beginnings of it. They're coming off of this High Republic era of being in the esteem of most of the galaxy, and I think they've let that go to their heads a little bit. They're like, we can't allow this image of ourselves to be tarnished, so we're going to cover things up. But of course, that always gets exposed and ruins your image anyway. It does the very thing that you're trying to prevent, which is, and one interesting little tidbit is, was like people, I've seen this debate. Was that Ki-Adi-Mundi in that room, or was that an alien that was just his race?
I thought it was him.
Because
he's
if
got
it's
the same facial features.
Same facial features, and I saw a thing that if you look in the credits, it says it's him. But if it's him, he's in on the cover-up, because in The Phantom Menace, he's the guy on the council who says, the Sith have been extinct for a millennium. And if it turns out later in this show that this sort of Jedi investigative committee knows that there are dark side users on the level of Sith out there in the galaxy, wow, that makes Ki-Adi-Mundi's whole presence in The Phantom Menace a lot more dark and unsettling, because he's still covering it up years after everyone else involved is probably dead. He's
I just looked it up on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia just says outright he's there.
Yeah.
Ki-Adi-Mundi suggests informing the Jedi High Council.
He was for informing the council, but then 100 years
at this point,
but then 100 years later, when he should speak up and say, "Yeah, we've actually known about the Sith for about a century," he's like, "Oh, they've been extinct for a millennium." I'm like, "Oh boy." Oh boy.
Well, this is still assuming that the Master is Sith.
See, I'm actually not. I'm not in that.
You're not
mode.
Convinced?
No, I actually think the Master may be a Coven survivor. That's kind of my wild speculation.
The Master is pretty strongly coded as male, has a masculine voice.
Right, they've said that.
Is referred to as he. And I think the Coven was intentionally exclusively women.
Women, yeah. I agree. I think, it's going to be voice modulation and turns out. But that's my wild speculation.
It was Indara all along.
Yeah.
He could be another red lightsaber using faction like the Knights of Ren or some such, but I just feel like I don't know, like it. I almost want them to go the route of him being a Sith, because then it makes it's interesting for storytelling potential, because they've introduced this idea of the cover up, and that that there are elements within the Jedi Council who may have known the whole time that the Sith had survived,
or something like them anyway.
Something like them. And when Qui-Gon comes in and says, "Hey, I may have encountered one," they just poo-poo it. They're like, impossible. So I'm like, if that was actually, like, if they're still covering it up a century later, I'm like, wow, okay, like, that's really corrupt.
Well, and we could get to the point where, whoever's involved in this thinks that they've done their job, right? Like, oh, we took care of them, they don't exist anymore. And that to me gets to one of the potential themes, I think, that's being exposed is sort of the Jedi as the keepers of the Force by Republic dictate. And how do we go about doing that? Because I think this is something we've explored in some of the Virtue Vice, a lot of those podcasts where we talked about, like, well, how does a Force user become good or evil? And I think the majority of the time, people being selfish, there's always going to be that pull towards the evil. And that doesn't necessarily mean they'll end up Sith, but I can understand why you would have a real problem with having, we've got this whole group of Force users on this planet that calls themselves a Coven, and like they indoctrinate their people and stuff. And Like, how does that work if you're the galactic chosen as, like, you're the proper way to do the Force, then when we encounter other people out there, how do you deal with them? Kind of a thing.
I think it's, I mean, again, this is one of the things that I love about this show is that it's showing how kind of the what that old Latin phrase or byword, you know, sort of the corruption of the best becomes the worst.
And also the other Latin phrase, who watches the watchman. Yeah.
So it's really looking at the Jedi as this organization that has the highest of ideals and the best of intentions. We thought we were doing the right thing. You know, they're trying to do good. And you see it draws people who have this deep desire to do good, to help other people. And yet it's slowly, you know, because it doesn't attain that ideal, it can't make people less. It has to become as corrupt as the people who inhabit it, and all of us have our attachments, and all of us have our weaknesses and our temptations. And if we are relying only on our own power and our own uprightness, we're going to make organizations that are only as upright as we are.
And what you say, like there, Robert, it reminds me, it's very Arthurian. As I've been delving more into the Arthur mythos, you find that what everyone thinks the Arthur mythos is, like these paragons of virtue, is not really the majority of the Knights of the Round Table.
Yeah.
The Arthurian mythos is messy and full of a lot of betrayal and corruption and outright murder. And, you know, and you have these paragons like
what? Percival.
Yeah. Galahad.
Yeah. Galahad.
You know?
Yep.
And it's but so many of the others are just human. And it's because of human flaws that Camelot falls. And if you think of Camelot as kind of like the Jedi Temple, you know, we see the first cracks now that will lead to the fall of Camelot 100 years later. So I'm like, now maybe I kind of understood what they meant early on when they were first pitching the High Republic to the public. They said it's going to be the Jedi Knights of the Round Table. And is that maybe what they meant? Because, like the more I learn about Arthurian mythos, the more I realize it's not this simplistic paragon of virtue knights versus absolute evil. It's much more complex.
And just historically, the whole notion of chivalry, which is, you know, largely what underlies the Arthurian stories, is this idea of chivalry, of nobility in the knights, and it was not really a historical thing. It was more something that the royalty and the nobility wanted to put out there to make people more accepting of the brutality of the knights in actual practice. That many of those who were knights were not knights because they were particularly moral or upstanding or just in their judgments. They were knights because they were strong or rich or both. And
usually both.
And were
both.
Yeah, usually both.
And killed the previous guy who held the position.
Right.
Yeah. And it was sort of like the king going, we really need to put some kind of restraint on these guys. Hey, church, can you help me with that? Like, well, we're doing our best, but we're just a bunch of monks.
Yeah, this is what's behind a lot of the chivalric orders, right? To some extent, behind the Crusades, even.
Yep, and the Knights Templar
is an attempt to civilize the knights and to take that power and direct it towards something good. And in most cases, it was half successful at best.
And and with the Crusades, it's like, let's direct these violent energies outward so that we're not fighting amongst ourselves. And so it's It's like they needed an outside enemy, which you find later in the Clone Wars, right? To bring it back to Star Wars, the Jedis have this where the Jedi become very much like the Knights Templar in terms that they're the elite military arm of the Republic against its external enemies.
Yeah, as falsely created as those external enemies
were. Yeah.
So I always go back to Andor. What did it turn out? We were fighting ourselves.
Yeah, and yet there is, I mean, as problematic and corrupt as the Jedi are, the Master seems to be genuinely evil.
Yeah.
This task is impossible, and yet he'll kill me if I don't accomplish it. I owe him. He collects people.
Yeah. Collects people. That was creepy. Yeah.
Even and I'm not sure if it's more creepy if Kynar is himself the Master.
And he says that, yeah.
And he says that, you know how he collects people. It's kind of the Silence of the Lambs thing. The serial killer who knows himself so completely is creepier than the serial killer who's just like an animal. So the Dark Lord who knows how dark he really is even creepier than I don't know, just a mere monster who's out for blood.
Yeah, I go back to when May describes it's not a test, right? This isn't a test. I have to kill somebody who is unarmed, right? That's like the most un-Jedi thing you can possibly do. It's like a way to discover yourself, or I can't remember how she puts it exactly, but she's explaining to. I keep just wanting to call him Chimera.
Yeah.
But she's explaining to him that no, it's not just a test. She says it's like it's a self-disguise. It's like the way you become you kind of a thing. And I'm very interested to see like how much of this is part of the long game. Like,
yeah,
because you get kind of a feel from this episode that maybe Osha coming into this and May finding out that Osha's still alive and all that wasn't necessarily part of the original game or part of the original strategy, that, the Master had just wanted these 4 Jedi dead. But the more I think about it, the more I'm like, no, I think Osha is as much of a piece in this game as May is for the Master, and I don't know exactly what long game he's trying to play with them, but I think I agree with the whole concept of trying to flip her to the other side, to bring her around and expose the truth. But that it brings up a question in my mind about who the Master is and why they would be motivated to do that at all. Like, do they know that the twins were made in a strange way? Like, I don't know how to put it because they haven't told us how, but it was some way that the Coven wanted to keep from the Jedi. Like, does the Master know that? Is he trying to use it? I mean, we saw when Palpatine figured out that Rey and Kylo were, a diadem in the Force, he made use of that real quick, right? He healed himself up and got to lasering.
Or when he much earlier realized, Anakin's origin. It's like, oh, I can use this. And my other kind of out there speculation is like, have the Jedi already been infiltrated by users of the dark side? I just have this feeling that we're going to get a reveal that either by the end of this, the Sith or whoever these people are going to have somebody on their side in the Jedi Order, or they already have. And that
Soul is going to come up to Vernestra and lean over and whisper into her ear,
Hail Hydra.
Hail Hydra.
Oh my gosh. That would be
not beyond the realm of possibility in my mind.
It would be amazing. I knew it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Soul is definitely hiding something, as you pointed out, Thomas, and it's not outside the realm of possibility that he is,
or someone
much more sinister. I mean, he's obviously not the Master in the black helmet,
right?
Because
they're in the scene together.
We are seeing them there, but he might be the Uber Master, or he might be Or he might be the Acolyte. Ooh. I said it here, so you know it's wrong.
Yep.
I don't know. We are literally at the halfway point of the series.
Yep. Oh my gosh, we are. I was gonna say we're pretty early in, but no, we're not.
No, we're halfway.
It feels early. It feels like this is going to be a huge story, and I don't know. At the pace it's going, I don't think I would mind it going 10, 12 episodes. But yeah, right now it's scheduled for 8. That makes us halfway through. So I'm wondering if starting, we've been getting, like, every episode has been raising more questions than it answers.
Yep.
And I wonder if we're going to start getting to beginning to answer some questions as we get to the second half of the series.
It better. I can't. I can't do another episode 8. I just can't do it. You answered none of my questions.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just got to take a dig on episode 8 whenever I possibly can. So I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, there's no talk, is there, of a season 2 of The Acolyte?
Not that I'm aware.
This is a standalone sort of, almost more a mini series than a TV show in that sense, right?
That's how I've seen it described, as a mini series.
Yeah.
Not as a show.
Yeah, I'm assuming, and one of the things that I really like about the writing of the show, again, the dialogue can be pretty clunky sometimes, but that's Star Wars for you. But the plotting of it has been pretty tight, and it's always moving forward. It feels like the seeds, the questions are being planted deliberately. So I am hopeful that it's going to have answers to most, if not all, of the questions that we're finding in these episodes. And I really hope that it has answers that are, like, deeply rooted in the themes that we're talking about here. The themes of destiny, the themes of what does it mean to be bound to somebody. Like when Osha says to Soul, she's objecting to going on the mission. It's like, she's a murderer. And he replies, she's also your family. And so, like, both the Jedi and the Coven are putting emphasis on that. You are bound together, one by nature and one by the thread. Yeah. So that exploration of, well, what does it mean to be an individual? What does it mean to be part of a community? How do these things work together? What is the good and the bad in using power, in seeking power? Yeah. I mean, so many really interesting themes. How do you have any kind of institution that can remain focused on the good rather than falling to corruption? Yeah. I mean, I just love the themes of this show.
I think that's the biggest thing I'm looking for is what is the nature of what the Jedi were trying to do with Osha and May? And is it hey, Yoda, because he's around, detected something out of this planet, really weird happening. We're gonna send 4 of you. Just find out what you can, and they show up and they handle it as best they can, but they bungle it or something, or is this sort of what was really going on? Like, I really enjoy the mystery aspect of this show.
Bungled this mission you have.
Yeah. And then Obi-Wan gets to say that to him after the whole Emperor thing.
Exactly.
I took care of my side of the ball. What did you do? Anyways.
Yeah. Pot, meat, kettle.
Yep,
yes. Yep. Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get any answers next episode, though. I think it's going to be chasing a guy in the dark. As everybody slowly gets cut down or disappeared or something. It's going to be bad. And we're if the director does it right, he's going to put us in the place of the Jedi. So we're going to be ticked off the entire episode. Just trying to get this guy.
Yeah. No, but like I'm a story structure geek, and the center point of the story, the midpoint of the story is usually where you get a reveal that is a big plot twist. And so I think there will be some answers coming in the next episode. It may still raise more questions than it answers, because I expect it to be an answer that is a plot twist. I guess we'll just have to wait till Tuesday to find out.
Dun, dun, dun.
Next time on The Acolyte. You know, in my very bad impression of the next time on Dragon Ball Z voice.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were going for Nappa there.
Oh, you know what? Yeah.
It kind of does sound, yeah.
Either way, yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, you do want to see these Jedi with like hair going all spiky as they suddenly power up.
Oh my gosh.
Why not?
That would be amazing to watch this Jedi go Super Saiyan. Oh yeah, I'd be down for that.
Maxi Big, the Force, as Jar Jar would say. I've been saving that one up.
And this is when you've decided to use it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's over 9,000.
This has been an amazing discussion. I mean, yes, more questions than answers, but so many good questions, and looking forward to where the show continues to take us. So that wraps up this episode of The Secrets of Star Wars. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons, especially including this evening, Jason M., Rob L., Paul G., Gary H., and Mike K. Your generous donations have helped us to create this very episode of Secrets of Star Wars and all of the shows that we have here on the StarQuest Network. Any of you listeners can join them. Go to our website, sqpn.com/give. We'd also love to hear from you. Like we said, lots of questions, not many answers. Tell us what you think. Let us know what you're thinking by sending us an email, starwars@sqpn.com. You can come to our social media pages. We talked about those at the beginning of the episode. Or come to our Discord server. That's my favorite place for conversation. You can get to our Discord server through our website, sqpn.com/discord. So that, I think, wraps us up. Thomas, Patrick, thank you for joining me in sharing the secrets of Star Wars.
Thank you, Robert.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having us on.
So, yeah, once again, I've been Robert King. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. The Catholics of Oz. Find it wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/Oz.